The chains rattled against the dusty wooden planks as Olivia Zimmerman stumbled forward, her wrists raw from the iron manacles that had been her constant companions for the past 3 days. The year was 1876, and the unforgiving Arizona Territory sun beat down on her disheveled form as the 3 bounty hunters who'd captured her prepared to leave her behind at the abandoned mining outpost. "She ain't worth the trouble," the tallest one spat, a wad of tobacco hitting the ground near Olivia's bare feet. "Sheriff in Tucson won't pay for damaged goods anyhow." Olivia raised her chin despite the exhaustion threatening to overcome her. "I didn't kill anyone," she insisted, her voice hoarse from thirst. If you'd just listen, the back of a calloused hand connected with her cheek, silencing her protest. The trio of men mounted their horses, leaving her chained to the post of what had once been a saloon porch. "Enjoy the company of the coyotes, darlin'," the second man called over his shoulder. "They'll be along soon enough." As the dust cloud from their departure settled, the reality of her situation sank in. Abandoned miles from civilization, bound in chains, and wanted for a murder she hadn't committed. Olivia slumped against the post, the weight of the iron shackles pulling at her wrists as tears carved clean tracks down her dirt-streaked face. The approaching sunset painted the desert landscape in hues of gold and crimson, a beauty that seemed to mock her predicament. With the darkness would come cold, and with the cold, predators. Olivia closed her eyes, conserving what little strength remained. The sound of hoofbeats roused her from a restless half-sleep. Night had fallen, and the silhouette of a lone rider approached through the darkness. She struggled to stand, uncertain if this newcomer represented salvation or further torment. The rider dismounted with fluid grace, his tall form backlit by the rising moon. A wide-brimmed hat shadowed his features as he approached cautiously. "Madam," his voice was deep but gentle. "You all right?" Olivia laughed bitterly. "Do I look all right to you, mister?" He moved closer, and she could see his face now weathered by sun and wind, but not unkind. His eyes, a startling blue even in the dim light, assessed her condition with concern. "Name's Owen Daniels," he said, removing his hat. "Seems you've had yourself some trouble." "Olivia Zimmerman," she replied, "and trouble doesn't begin to describe it." Owen examined the chains binding her to the post, his expression darkening. "Who did this to you, bounty hunters? There's a reward for my capture in Tucson." She met his gaze defiantly. "I'm innocent." "Ain't my place to judge," Owen replied, drawing a tool from his saddlebag. "But no one deserves to be left like this." As he worked at the bolts securing her to the post, Olivia studied him, a tall man with broad shoulders, perhaps 30 years old, with hair the color of wheat and a neatly trimmed beard. His clothes were dusty but well kept, marking him as a working man who took pride in his appearance. The bolt gave way, freeing her from the post, though the manacles remained firmly locked around her wrists. "Can't get these off without the key," Owen said, examining the iron cuffs, "but at least you're not tied to the building anymore." Olivia rubbed her chafed wrists. "Why help me? For all you know, I could be guilty." Owen's eyes crinkled slightly at the corners. "My pa always said you can judge a person's character by looking them in the eye. Yours tell me you're running from something, but it ain't because you're hiding guilt." He offered her water from his canteen, which she accepted gratefully. "I'll carry the weight till they rust away," he said simply, nodding toward her chains. "Pardon, those chains," Owen clarified. "I'll help you carry their weight until we can get them off proper or until they rust away." "Whichever comes first." A small smile played at his lips. "Though I reckon we should try for the former. Could be a long wait otherwise." Despite everything, Olivia felt a smile tug at her own mouth. "You're an unusual man, Mr. Daniels." "Just Owen," he corrected, helping her to her feet. "And out here, unusual might be what keeps a person alive. Can you ride?" She nodded. "If it means getting away from here, I can ride through hellfire." Owen led her to his horse, a magnificent chestnut gelding with intelligent eyes. "This is Thunder. He's strong enough to carry us both until we reach my camp." With some difficulty due to her shackled hands, Olivia mounted behind Owen, wrapping her arms around his waist for stability. As they rode into the night, she rested her forehead against his back, overwhelmed by exhaustion and unexpected relief. "My ranch is about a day's ride northwest," Owen explained over his shoulder. "But I've got a camp set up about an hour from here. We'll rest there tonight." True to his word, they arrived at a small camp tucked into a sheltered arroyo. A small fire pit, bedroll, and modest supplies marked Owen's temporary home. "It's not much," he said apologetically as he helped her dismount. "It's paradise compared to where I was," Olivia assured him. Owen rekindled the fire and shared his provisions: jerky, beans, and strong coffee. As they ate, Olivia gradually revealed her story. "I was working as a schoolteacher in Tucson," she explained. "A prominent businessman, Maxwell Thornton, took an interest in me. When I refused his advances, he became insistent." Owen's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, allowing her to continue. "One night he cornered me after school. He'd been drinking." Olivia's voice wavered. "When he tried to force himself on me, I defended myself with a letter opener. I only meant to scare him, but he stumbled backward, hit his head on the corner of my desk." She stared into the flames. "He wasn't dead when I fled, just unconscious. But the next morning, I heard he'd been found murdered, his throat cut. That wasn't me, I swear it." "But you ran," Owen observed without judgment, "wouldn't you? His family owns half the territory, his brother's the magistrate." Olivia's hands trembled. "I ran, and that made me look guilty. 3 days ago, those bounty hunters caught up with me." Owen studied her across the flickering flames. "So someone else killed him and you're taking the blame?" "Exactly," Olivia whispered. "But who would believe me over the Thornton family?" "I believe you," Owen said simply. Olivia looked up, startled by the certainty in his voice. "Why, people talk, even out here." Maxwell Thornton's reputation with women was well known to those who cared to listen. Owen poured her more coffee. "And a woman who'd cut a man's throat wouldn't hesitate to do the same to the bounty hunters rather than be taken in." The fire popped and crackled between them as Olivia absorbed his words. For the first time in weeks, she felt the faintest flicker of hope. "What will you do now?" Owen asked. "I don't know," she admitted. "I can't keep running forever." "No," he agreed. "You can't." He studied her face across the flames. "But you don't have to figure it all out tonight. Get some rest. I'll keep watch." Owen offered her his bedroll while he sat propped against his saddle, rifle across his lap. Despite her exhaustion, Olivia found sleep elusive, the weight of the chains a constant reminder of her predicament. When she finally drifted off, her dreams were haunted by pursuing shadows and accusing faces. Dawn broke with a spectacular array of colors painting the eastern sky. Olivia awoke to find Owen already awake, tending a small cooking fire. The aroma of coffee filled the air. "Morning," he greeted, handing her a tin cup. "Hope you slept some." "Better than I have in weeks," she admitted. It wasn't entirely true, but she appreciated his kindness too much to say otherwise. As they shared a simple breakfast of biscuits and bacon, Owen outlined his plan. "My ranch is about 12 miles northwest of here. We'll head there first, see if we can't get those chains off. Then we can figure out how to clear your name." "You make it sound so simple," Olivia remarked. "Nothing simple about it," he replied. "But running won't solve it, and I can't in good conscience leave a lady in chains." They rode through rugged terrain, Owen pointing out landmarks and sharing stories of his 5 years in the territory. He'd come west after the war between the states, seeking a fresh start away from the devastation of his Tennessee home. "Bought the land cheap from a discouraged miner," he explained. "Built it up from nothing. It's not grand, but it's mine." By mid-afternoon, they crested a ridge overlooking a modest valley. A small ranch house, barn, and corral came into view, nestled against the backdrop of red cliffs. A stream cut through the property, lined with cottonwoods whose leaves shimmered silver in the breeze. "Welcome to Redemption Ranch," Owen said with undisguised pride. "It's beautiful," Olivia breathed, genuinely impressed by the oasis he'd created in the harsh landscape. As they approached, a wiry man with graying hair emerged from the barn, rifle at the ready until he recognized Owen. "Took you long enough," the man called, lowering his weapon. His eyes widened at the sight of Olivia. "And you brought company." "Frank, this is Miss Olivia Zimmerman," Owen introduced as they dismounted. "She's in a bit of trouble." "Miss Zimmerman, this is Frank Peterson, my ranch hand and the closest thing to family I've got out here." Frank's eyes took in the chains at her wrists, but his weather-beaten face remained impassive. "Any friend of Owen's is welcome here." He reached for the reins. "I'll see to Thunder. You two look like you could use some washing up and food." Inside the ranch house, Olivia was surprised by the homey touches curtains at the windows, books on shelves, a rag rug on the plank floor. Owen noticed her expression. "My ma taught me a house needs softness to balance the hard edges of life," he explained with a hint of embarrassment. "Plus, I like reading." He showed her to a small room off the main living area. "It's not much, but you can rest here." "It's perfect," she assured him, overwhelmed by his generosity. Owen rummaged in a trunk and produced a clean shirt and pair of trousers. "These might swim on you, but they're cleaner than what you've got." After he left her alone, Olivia struggled to wash with her chained hands, managing as best she could with the basin of water he'd provided. The borrowed clothes engulfed her slender frame, but the clean cotton against her skin felt like luxury after days in the same dirty dress. In the main room, she found Owen examining her chains with a set of tools. "These are good quality," he observed with a frown. "Designed to stay put without a key. Can you break them?" Olivia asked hopefully. "Not without risking harm to your wrists," Owen replied, "but I might be able to pick the locks." He worked carefully, his large hands surprisingly dexterous with the delicate tools, but after nearly an hour he sat back with a sigh of frustration. "I'm sorry," he said. "These are beyond my skill." Olivia tried to hide her disappointment. "It's all right, I've gotten used to them." "You shouldn't have to," Owen said firmly. "Frank's riding into Holbrook tomorrow for supplies. There's a blacksmith there who might have the tools to cut these off safely." That evening they shared a hearty stew prepared by Frank, who proved to be an excellent cook despite his gruff exterior. As they ate, Owen explained Olivia's situation. Frank listened without interruption, then nodded thoughtfully. "The Thornton family has a long reach, but they're not well loved by common folk, particularly the younger brother Emmett. He's got a mean streak wider than the Rio Grande." "Emmett is the magistrate," Olivia confirmed. "He's the one who issued the warrant for my arrest." "Convenient," Frank remarked. "If I were looking to cover up my own crime, having control of the law would be mighty helpful." Owen leaned forward. "You think Emmett might have killed his brother?" "It's worth considering," Frank replied. "Those two have been feuding over the family business for years. Maxwell controlled the purse strings and Emmett didn't care for playing second fiddle." A spark of hope ignited in Olivia's chest. "If we could prove that." "Proving anything against a Thornton won't be easy," Frank cautioned. "But I know a few people in Tucson who might be willing to talk for the right price." They stayed up late into the night, formulating a plan. Frank would travel to Holbrook not just for supplies, but to send telegrams to his contacts in Tucson. Meanwhile, Owen would take Olivia to a hidden cabin in the mountains where she could remain safely out of sight. As the conversation wound down and Frank retired to the barn where he slept, Olivia found herself alone with Owen by the dying fire. "Why are you doing all this for me?" she asked softly. "You're risking everything for a stranger." Owen's gaze remained on the embers. "Maybe because I know what it's like to be judged unfairly." He was quiet for a moment. "During the war, I was accused of cowardice when I refused to execute prisoners. I wasn't a coward, I just couldn't murder men who'd surrendered, but the stain on my name followed me regardless." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "Or maybe I'm helping because it's the right thing to do. Either way, you're not alone in this anymore." The sincerity in his voice touched something deep within Olivia. Despite the chains that still bound her wrists, she felt lighter than she had in weeks. The next morning, Frank departed for Holbrook with a list of supplies and the names of contacts in Tucson. Owen prepared for their journey to the mountain cabin, loading provisions into saddlebags. "It's about a 4-hour ride," he explained as he helped Olivia mount a gentle mare named Daisy. "The cabin belonged to the miner who sold me this land. Most folks have forgotten it exists." The journey took them through increasingly rugged terrain, climbing steadily into pine-covered slopes. Olivia marveled at the changing landscape so different from the desert below, with its cool shadows and the scent of pine needles in the air. The cabin itself was small but sturdy, nestled in a clearing beside a tumbling stream. Inside, Owen lit a fire in the stone hearth, dispelling the musty air. "Not exactly the Willard Hotel," he apologized, "but it's secure." "It's perfect," Olivia assured him, drawn to the window with its breathtaking view of the valley below. From this vantage point she could see for miles, including the distant outline of Owen's ranch. They settled into a routine over the next few days. Owen taught Olivia to fish in the stream, adapting techniques to accommodate her chained hands. She, in turn, helped organize the cabin, turning it from a Spartan shelter into a more comfortable haven. In the evenings, they shared stories by the fire, Owen of his childhood in Tennessee and his dreams for the ranch, Olivia of her upbringing in St. Louis and her hope of someday opening her own school. On the 5th day, Owen returned from checking his snares with 2 rabbits for their dinner. As he cleaned them outside, Olivia watched him through the window, struck by the gentle strength in his hands. Despite his size and capability, he'd never made her feel frightened or threatened. Instead, she felt increasingly safe in his presence, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. That evening, as they ate rabbit stew, Owen seemed preoccupied. "Is something wrong?" Olivia asked. "Frank should have returned by now," he admitted. "I'm getting concerned." "Could he have been delayed in Holbrook?" "Possible," Owen acknowledged, "but not like him not to send word." His worry proved well-founded. Shortly after dawn the next morning, they were awakened by the sound of approaching horses, multiple riders moving fast. Owen grabbed his rifle, peering cautiously through the window. "It's Frank," he reported with relief, "but he's got company and he's riding hard." They hurried outside as Frank galloped into the clearing, followed by 2 other riders. All 3 men dismounted quickly, their expressions grave. "Thornton's men are coming," Frank announced without preamble. "A dozen of them, led by Emmett himself. They're about 2 hours behind us." Owen's face hardened. "How did they find us?" "Bounty on Miss Zimmerman has tripled," one of the other men explained. "Someone in Holbrook recognized Frank from previous visits here and put it together. Word travels fast when there's that much money involved." "These are Sam Tucker and Joe Williams," Frank introduced. "Good men who have had their own run-ins with the Thorntons. They're here to help." Owen nodded gratefully to the newcomers, then turned to Olivia. "We need to move quickly. Is there anything in the cabin you need?" She shook her head, still processing the sudden danger. The chains at her wrists seemed heavier than ever. "What's the plan?" Owen asked Frank. "We can't outrun them with the lady in chains," Frank replied. "But we might be able to lay a false trail, lead them away from here while you 2 head north toward the territorial border." "And then what?" Olivia asked, fear evident in her voice. Sam Tucker, a wiry man with a silver-streaked beard, stepped forward. "I've got news that might help with that." He handed Owen a folded newspaper. "This came in on yesterday's stage to Holbrook." Owen unfolded the paper, the Tucson Daily Star. The headline leapt from the page. "Thornton Murder, New Witness Comes Forward." Olivia gasped as Owen read aloud. "A maid employed by the Thornton family has provided testimony that she witnessed Emmett Thornton returning home in the early hours following his brother's murder, his clothes stained with blood. The maid, Maria Vasquez, has been placed in protective custody after receiving threats. Authorities are now seeking Emmett Thornton for questioning. They've been holding this back for days," Joe Williams added. "Only printed when Maria threatened to take her story to every paper in the territory." Emmett knows his time is running out, that's why he's so desperate to find Miss Zimmerman. If he eliminates the only other suspect, Frank concluded grimly, he buys himself time to disappear. Owen's jaw set in determination. Then we need to get Olivia to the territorial marshal in Prescott. With this newspaper and her testimony, they'll have to listen. The men quickly formulated a plan. Frank, Sam, and Joe would create a false trail heading east, drawing off Thornton's men. Meanwhile, Owen and Olivia would head northwest through the most rugged terrain, making for Prescott. As the others prepared to depart, Sam approached with a small leather pouch. Almost forgot brought something that might help. He removed a set of thin, specialized tools. I was a locksmith before turning to ranching, thought I might try my hand at those chains. With Owen holding steady the manacles, Sam worked the locks with practiced precision. Within minutes, there was a satisfying click and the first cuff fell away. Olivia gasped as the pressure released from her raw wrist. Sam quickly freed her second hand as well. "Thank you," she whispered, tears in her eyes as she rubbed her chafed wrists. "Just returning a kindness," Sam replied. "Owen helped my family when no one else would during the drought 2 years back. With no time to waste, the group parted ways." Frank, Sam, and Joe headed east, making as obvious a trail as possible, while Owen and Olivia set off northwest on fresh horses, carrying minimal supplies to maintain speed. They rode hard through the day, pushing the horses as much as they dared through the difficult terrain. Olivia, though free of her chains, felt their phantom weight with every jolt of the saddle. By nightfall, they had covered nearly 30 miles of rough country. "We'll rest here," Owen decided, selecting a sheltered spot between towering boulders. "Just for a few hours. We need to keep moving before dawn." As Owen prepared a small, smokeless fire, Olivia studied him in the growing darkness. The past week had transformed her perception of him from kind stranger to something far more significant. His unwavering support, his willingness to risk everything for her, these were not the actions of a man simply doing his duty. "You could have sent me away with Frank," she said quietly. "It would have been safer for you." Owen looked up from the fire. "I made you a promise." "The chains are gone now," she reminded him. "Some chains you can't see," he replied. "I promised to stay with you until you were truly free, and that means clearing your name." Olivia moved closer, drawn by the warmth in his eyes. "I've never known anyone like you, Owen Daniels." His gaze held hers, something unspoken passing between them. Slowly, hesitantly, he reached out to brush a strand of hair from her face. The gentle touch sent warmth spreading through her despite the cool night air. "When this is over," he said softly, "when you're truly free, I'd like to know if the distant sound of a breaking branch snapped their attention away from each other." Owen immediately doused the fire, drawing his pistol as he listened intently. "Could be an animal," Olivia whispered hopefully. Owen shook his head, pointing to the horses who stood alert, ears pricked forward. "They don't react that way to wildlife." Moving silently, they gathered their belongings and led the horses deeper into the rocks. From their new position, they could see the approach to their former campsite. Within minutes, 2 riders appeared, moving cautiously with rifles ready. "Thornton's men," Owen breathed. "They must have split up when they realized the eastern trail was false." Olivia's heart raced as the men dismounted to examine the still warm ashes of their fire. One knelt to touch the ground, then pointed in their direction. "We need to go," Owen whispered. "Now." They mounted as quietly as possible and urged their horses up a steep, rocky path that would be difficult for pursuers to follow in the dark. Behind them came shouts as their movement was detected. A rifle shot cracked through the night, the bullet whining off stones somewhere to their left. Owen pulled alongside Olivia, shielding her with his body as they rode. Another shot rang out, this one finding its mark in Owen's shoulder. He grunted in pain but kept riding. "You're hit," Olivia cried. "Keep moving," he ordered through gritted teeth. They pushed on through the darkness, the sounds of pursuit gradually fading behind them. Only when they reached the top of a ridge, with a valley spread out before them in the moonlight, did Owen allow them to stop. Blood had soaked through his shirt, but he remained upright through sheer determination. "Let me see," Olivia insisted, helping him dismount. The bullet had passed clean through his left shoulder, a painful but not immediately life-threatening wound. Using strips torn from her petticoat, Olivia bandaged him as best she could. "We need to find you a doctor," she said, her voice tight with worry. "Prescott first," Owen insisted. "It's only a few more hours' ride. You might not last a few more hours." Owen captured her hand in his. "I've come too far to let you face this alone now. We finish this together." The determination in his eyes brooked no argument. They rested briefly, then continued their journey as the first hint of dawn brightened the eastern sky. Owen grew paler as they rode, but refused to slow their pace. By mid-morning, they reached the outskirts of Prescott. The territorial capital was larger than Olivia had expected, with proper streets and substantial buildings reflecting its status. Owen directed them straight to the territorial marshal's office, a solid brick building on the main square. They dismounted, Owen swaying slightly as his feet touched the ground. Olivia steadied him, alarmed by the fresh blood seeping through his bandages. Inside, they found a bustling office. Owen stepped forward, his voice carrying despite his weakened state. "I need to speak with Marshal Davis immediately. It's regarding Emmett Thornton and the murder in Tucson." The deputy behind the desk looked up sharply. His eyes narrowed as they took in Owen's bloodied shirt and Olivia's disheveled appearance. "And you are Owen Daniels." "This is Olivia Zimmerman, the woman wrongly accused of Maxwell Thornton's murder. We have evidence implicating Emmett Thornton, and we've just outrun his men who tried to kill us both." The intensity of Owen's declaration brought the office to a standstill. A door at the rear opened, revealing a tall man with a silver star on his vest. "I'm Davis," he said, his keen eyes assessing them quickly. "Come in and someone fetch a doctor for that shoulder." The next hours passed in a blur. Owen was treated by the town doctor while Olivia gave her statement to Marshal Davis. The newspaper article was examined, telegrams sent to Tucson, and responses received confirming Maria Vasquez's testimony. By evening, word arrived that Emmett Thornton had been apprehended trying to cross into Mexico, and had subsequently confessed to killing his brother in a dispute over the family fortune. In the small guest room of Marshal Davis's home where they had been invited to recover, Olivia sat beside Owen's bed. The doctor had removed the bullet fragments, cleaned the wound, and pronounced that with proper care he would make a full recovery. "It's over," she told him, her voice thick with emotion. "Marshal Davis received confirmation that all charges against me have been dropped. I'm free." Owen's face, pale against the pillows, broke into a smile that reached his eyes. "That's what I've been fighting for." Olivia took his hand, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You nearly died for me. Worth it," he replied simply. She leaned closer. "Earlier, before we were interrupted, you started to ask me something. You said when this is over, when you're truly free, I'd like to know if there might be a place for me in your future," Owen finished softly. "I know we haven't known each other long, but I've never felt this way about anyone before. When I found you in those chains, something inside me knew I'd do whatever it took to set you free, not just from the iron, but from everything holding you captive." Olivia's heart swelled with emotions too complex for words. Instead, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his in a gentle kiss that conveyed everything she couldn't say. When they finally parted, Owen's eyes shone with new light despite his weakness. "Is that a yes?" he asked, a hint of his usual humor returning. "It's a beginning," Olivia replied, smiling through her tears. "I was heading nowhere when you found me, but now." She squeezed his hand. "Now I think I might like to see what Redemption Ranch looks like in springtime and summer and every season after that." Owen's smile deepened. "It looks better with a schoolteacher in residence." "A schoolteacher?" The The children at the nearby farms and ranches could use some education, he explained, and I happen to know a highly qualified teacher looking for a position. Olivia laughed, the sound bright and free. Are you offering me a job, Mr. Daniels? I'm offering you a home, he corrected softly. The job is just a bonus. 3 months later, Olivia stood on the porch of the ranch house, watching as children from neighboring properties filed into the small schoolhouse Owen had built adjacent to the main house. What had begun as a classroom for 6 students had quickly grown to 15 as word spread of the new school at Redemption Ranch. Owen approached from the barn, his arm now fully healed. He wrapped it around her waist, pressing a kiss to her temple. Happy? He asked. Olivia leaned into his embrace, her gold wedding band catching the sunlight. They had married in Prescott just 6 weeks after the confrontation with Thornton's men, with Marshall Davis giving the bride away and Frank serving as best man. Happier than I ever imagined possible, she replied truthfully. When those men left me in chains, I thought my life was over. I never dreamed it was just beginning. Owen's expression grew serious. I meant what I said that first night. I would have carried the weight of those chains until they rusted away if that's what it took. I know, Olivia said, rising on tiptoe to kiss him properly, but I much prefer this way. The school bell rang, calling her to her duties. Olivia reluctantly pulled away from her husband's embrace. Mrs. Daniels, he said formally, tipping his hat with exaggerated courtesy, your students await. Olivia laughed, the sound carrying across the ranch yard. As she walked toward the schoolhouse, she glanced back at Owen, her rescuer, her partner, her love. The chains that had once bound her were long gone, but the promise he'd made that night remained stronger than any iron. To share her burdens, to fight for her freedom, to love her without reservation. And in that promise, Olivia had found not just liberation, but a home.